Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Rise to Your Peak podcast. I am here with my guest today, Kenneth Almond, and we are going to be chatting. Well, we'll be catching up a bit. We're going to be chatting about a lot of different things. Kenneth and I haven't actually caught up with each other in a good while. For those of you who may not be totally familiar with Kenneth, he is a online functional medicine and bodybuilding coach. Working in Raleigh, North Carolina, but he services the entire United States, similar to myself and some of the other guests that we've had on. Ken, how you doing?
Good man. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad for you to be here, brother.
Even worse. But glad you pulled that a little
I'm very excited about that. The Nissan was a fun time, and this is going to be a different experience for sure.
Yeah, because I remember when I think we took an exit off the highway in the Nissan. And for those of you that don't know what the Nissan looked like, it looked like he stole it from a junkyard and souped it up.
Accurate.
And you punched it, and I remember screaming like a little girl. So I can only imagine what the Corvette's going to be like when we ride into that, because you haven't maxed it out yet.
I haven't launched it or really pushed it
You
yet.
just put turbos on it.
Yeah. Yeah, since the turbos have been on, man, it's just like...
Are you scared?
It can get squirrely. It can get squirrely quick. I'm not... I'm more scared of ending up in a ditch than I am...
Scared?
No. No, I'm more scared of fucking around and damaging the car. Yeah. Yeah.
Should I call Donna and tell her that I may not be home?
I got a helmet for you. We'll be good. We'll be good. No, I mean, I've definitely, tested it rolling, but I've yet to do like a launch from a stop.
Okay.
Kind of like we did in the Nissan. So
We did that with the Porsches. Sam Miller and I did that with Porsches.
how was that?
It was unbelievable, man, because they have a launch mode
Yeah.
where it literally feels like you just got thrown out of a rocket ship. I mean, it's wild. And I think we got all the way up to 95 miles an hour in that short span. And then you have to slam the brakes. And they even say, like, you're gonna be scared to kind of slam on the brakes because of the way it feels. And sure enough, as soon as you slam the brakes, it feels like you're going to go through the car almost, and then somehow the ABS works to where it like just immediately stops.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a really interesting experience. We did the Porsche, I guess they call it the Porsche experience in Georgia
Yeah.
or whatever, and so that was the first time that I ever got to drive a 911.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like a childhood dream.
Yeah.
But I'm actually expecting more out of the Corvette than the Porsche.
It might be. I mean, well, especially with the twin
With the
turbos.
turbos.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was a lot of fun. And but yeah, I just remember the first time that you took me out, and I just remember thinking, wow, this car is really fast. Like, I was really kind of enamored by it.
Yeah.
But now that we've gained some age, we've gained some, we're a little bit more financially stable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stuff like that. So now I'm even more excited about it.
Yeah, well, what's really funny, if you remember, before we took that car out, the first thing we had to do was go fill up the tires
Yeah.
with quarters.
Yeah.
I had to grab a bunch of quarters, fill up tires.
We had to push it out of the way.
We did.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was a.
It was a beater.
How much did you pay for that?
$5,000. and with all the mods.
And life has changed so much.
So much.
And you're gonna move.
I am.
That's a sad day, dude.
It's a sad day, but it's a
only
new
sad to
chapter.
me. It's probably great for you, though.
I mean, we're very excited about moving to Florida. There's just so many different aspects. Number one, telemedicine is just way different regulated in Florida.
How so?
We can connect with 4 new pharmacies now that didn't service North Carolina. So that's big. What's that?
Your mom's down there.
Mom's down there. We're now 5 minutes from my mom and her husband. And, it's been 4 years since his stroke, but he still has a lot of difficulties. And my poor mom, she's retired, but basically been his private nurse for the past 4 years, which has been very, very hard on her. So just, being there for them. Yeah. Aaron can take her out and go get a pedicure and stuff, and I can watch Steve and help out. We can cook them dinners, lots of stuff like that. Just make life easier and more enjoyable on them for retirement. No income tax in Florida.
Okay.
That's fucking nice.
So that might be something that I end up doing. I'm just falling down there. Because it sucks.
Dude, between the 3 companies, doing the math roughly, it's going to be like 40 to 50K we save.
Dude, that's wild.
Fucking nuts, dude.
Why does that?
And I even talked to Patrick. I was like, hey, man, if you want to change All Pro, like, I'll help you out.
Right.
Use my address and shit.
Yeah.
Because it's just so crazy how much money you could save.
I mean,
plus it's the medical is legal there.
So Tennessee, Florida, are those the only ones near us with
no income tax?
Because I know Tennessee's that way.
As far as I know, I have heard about other Midwest.
Do you think with the change of the guard, do you think we'll have more changes like that? Because they're looking at.
I think there's going to be. Yeah, I think there's going to be a ton of changes to the tax system. Nothing overnight, but I think there's so many different ways that they're looking at manipulating things. It's not like as simple as like no more taxes. There's just so many different incentives and ways that they're looking at manipulating things. One big thing Trump talked about was like incentivizing U.S. based companies to stay in the U.S. and bringing down their taxes to only 15% if they're in the U.S. Does that benefit all U.S. companies? We'll have to see what that ends up looking like. But I mean, RFK, dude, he basically already said he's going to reopen access to a lot of peptides and make functional medicine services. Yeah.
Can you even get into that realm if you're?
I don't know. We haven't really looked.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we do have access to ketamine. We have access to ketamine right now. Right. So I'd be curious to see.
So walking down that path with, say you have a patient and they come to you, what is the right situation to prescribe the ketamine? Do we know?
We don't know. This is the only patient that's been prescribed it. Because I had never done it, so I wanted to try it. So Aaron and I have tried it.
Does it work?
It's being drunk without drinking. You're intoxicated. You're fucking...
Really?
Yeah.
What dose is that?
I'd have to check again because there are troches.
There's a microdose, right?
Yeah, that's not what we did.
Okay.
We didn't microdose. We wanted to feel it, know?
Right.
So first we got a nasal spray. Fucking awful. I hate nasal sprays. The drip, the whole aftertaste, just awful.
How long did it last?
Not long. It's very short acting. Like 30 to 60 minutes.
Really?
So that was, you had to keep fucking...
Are you happy? Or are you... Because I know it's a disassociative drug.
Yes.
You're happy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, as happy as you would be with friends having a beer.
Okay.
That kind of calmness and disassociation of you've had a couple drinks and you're socializing.
Okay.
That's the best way to describe it. That's what I felt like.
So
3 drinks in, socializing.
From a mental health perspective, because that's the majority of the reason why it's legal.
Right.
Is it, do you take it and go to therapy? Or do you take it and you work through things on your own? So
I know people who are prescribed it for acute anxiety and in tablet form take it as needed. I obviously don't think that that's really servicing them long term.
Sure.
Very short term service.
It's like microdosing psilocybin.
Yeah.
You're not really getting rid of the root.
Well, it's not even that because, I mean, with most microdosing, it's consistent. This is literally like, oh, I have anxiety on Thursday, so I'm going to take some. It's almost like an Advil application.
Sure.
So I don't think that that's wise. It helps her in her marriage because she's not a fucking anxious person.
Sure.
But I think that that's very treatment or symptom based and not like let's help this woman.
Calls based.
So I absolutely think it could be used in therapy, but actually I would say you're going to see much more benefit from psychedelics.
Right.
Because ketamine, from what I know, is not opening up your mind and allowing your brain to think differently. It's just relaxing.
Yeah, so it's separating you from.
Yeah. Yeah, so I could see someone who needs relaxation due to chronic anxiety, microdosing it daily. For therapy, I could see way more benefit from mushrooms and stuff.
Okay.
But I do know that they do deep ketamine dive therapies. I just don't know all the information of how that's beneficial.
Right, sure. So the reason why I asked is because I love psychedelics from the standpoint of what it's done for my mental health.
Yeah.
Also what it's done for friends of mine. I've also had experience, so 5-MeO-DMT is, I've done that 3 or 4 times now.
Yeah.
And they call that one of the strongest ones you can do.
Yeah.
And it's you smoke it, and I was under the care of a shaman at the time. But when you smoke it, it's about an 18-minute to 45-minute completely gone
Hallucinate.
trip.
Yeah.
Now, there were multiple different experiences that I had in the various times that I did it.
Yeah.
But what it seemed like it did was, and this is, I guess, the most of my knowledge of what it's done, is your amygdala, which is the trauma store of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you guys are listening, so like if you've got a looping thought, let's say, I'm not good enough, I'm fat, whatever, that's a trauma response that your amygdala holds on to, because it's whatever happened to cause the negative cognition hasn't allowed your brain to work through it. So that
you just stay stuck in that programming.
Right, so you're in that loop constantly. So when I did the DMT, I was in an extremely depressed state, and the first time, and the following day, I was almost to the place of like not eating at all, not getting up to do anything. I was talking to very few people. You were one of the people at the time.
Yeah.
And then the following day, I'm eating food, getting dressed.
It was drastic.
Going for a walk.
Yeah.
By the end of the week, it was like, wow, I'm fixed. It pulled that trauma out.
Yeah.
And I was allowed to process it. But it was a very like roller coaster ride experience, right?
Yeah.
So when I talk about it with people, there's a lot of fear in behind of the unknown of what it's like when you enter into the psychedelic realm.
Yeah.
And I have a point, so follow along with me, and I'll loop all the way back around. But the deal is, what I find the biggest issue in my job, and maybe in your job, is the mental health component.
Sure.
Of these functional cases that we work on. And I find that the mental health side drives insulin resistance significantly, because we've got cortisol constantly being dumped. So there's been cases where, and these are bodybuilders, where I've been like, hey, you need to go do DMT. Because, this is a blanket statement, and I think it would be true. Breakups make bodybuilders. So nobody's entering into the bodybuilding space with the mental health that's pristine.
Good. Yeah, sound.
Right. So we're dealing with a lot.
Except maybe Chris Bumstead.
Yeah, but
one human.
But did he get there on the journey?
Yeah.
I think that's probably
what
happened.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's what's happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm still bodybuilding. I'm 42 years old. I'm having the best off season of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm in the best mental place I've ever been. So being able to check the boxes while being mentally sound, it's just simple.
Of course.
And you would think it would be simple for anyone, but
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
Because the prior me couldn't even get up to go cook my meal.
Yeah.
So the point of all of it is it would be really a beautiful thing if your clinic could get involved on the psychedelic side.
Yeah.
And we could sort of circumvent some of the mental health issues
Yeah.
that we're seeing with our clients using psychedelics.
Yeah.
But I imagine you would have to be equipped, and I've actually looked into this course, and I'll have to look it up and send it to you. But there's a guy who heads up psychedelic coaching
Oh.
to add to practitioners' sort of arsenal of being able to help their clients, and that's a big ticket item.
Yeah.
It's like I want to say it's probably a $10,000
Course.
but there's some add-ons after the fact that make it even more expensive.
Yeah.
So ultimately, he's targeting sort of executives,
Yep.
because you would have to pull that type of price tag. And I don't know where they're getting the psychedelics currently. I can't imagine it not being the black market.
Right.
So the point would be, if we could get access to the drugs, and because you can get prescriptions from compound pharmacies, however this disseminates down to the pharmacies, I would be really interested in working with you to get that as a part of the clinic.
Yeah, that would be amazing. We've agreed on this for a long time, and I think I mentioned this to you a few months ago, that we've connected with a few therapists and mindset coaches, not as like Ryze employee service, so to speak, but outsourcing. Like, we acknowledge that this could be really helpful for patients, and so we tell them, like, it takes a village sometimes. These are 3 different, companies, that we recommend. We'll handle the physical and physiological. They handle the psychological components of this, and it all needs to kind of come together in a trilogy. So, that would just be another step forward to helping people have even more progress with that therapy component,
Are you seeing those current, people that have partnered with, be able to work cohesively enough to move the needle with those people?
Sometimes.
That's been my experience too.
The hardest thing, to be perfectly honest, is price.
Sure.
They're spending all this money on testing, all this money on functional services, and in some of these cases, the people we refer who do telemedicine don't take insurance.
Yeah, right.
So then you're looking at, maybe another $400 a month to do weekly calls with someone. Hard to grab them for 8 weeks. Maybe they do 1 call, maybe they do 2 calls, but what's that really going to do?
Right.
You didn't even break the surface of.
So that's what's kind of like driven me. So my own mental health journey, I was in therapy for probably 10 years prior to us meeting.
Yeah.
That particular therapist, she wasn't necessarily bad, but I don't think she was equipped to deal with trauma per se. So I learned how to communicate. Like, that was the main takeaway from that work, and learned how to deal with, maybe adversity better. But then there became a point where the trauma sort of piled on.
Sure.
And then she was like, this is out of my wheelhouse. I'm going to refer you over to a person who can do EMDR therapy.
Yeah.
So that's what I started alongside. And so when I was doing I just entered into EMDR, then I did 5-MeO-DMT, and I sat in front of my therapist and told her about the experience. And she was like, well, you essentially did 15 to 20 sessions of EMDR therapy.
Crash course.
In a 18-minute trip.
Wow.
Is what you did.
Wow.
And so that piqued her interest. But as we started to work together, so I've been with her for 2 years and she's incredible. Her name's Tasia Hawkins. Hey, Tasia. And ultimately, we moved from EMDR to brain spotting. So brain spotting is, let's say, there's some things on the wall here. As I gaze from right to left, there's a point in which your brain, your subconscious, can be unlocked at a point at the wall. It's wild. So the very first time she ever did it, she pulled a pointer out, and she took the pointer and she moved it from right to left. And as soon as I felt emotion, like a rise in emotion, she stopped the pointer. And you stare at the pointer. And you let whatever you feel come out. Now there's a point where you're like, fuck that. Because there's a part of you that says, I don't want to feel that emotion.
Out. Yeah.
I don't want to feel that trauma.
Yeah.
And you already have the subject line of what you're trying to work through.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is and I'm sure you've been here, you're like, okay, so I've been through this really difficult thing. There's all these emotions that are tied to this trauma, and I'm getting ready to feel it. But the fear is, I'm going to feel this emotion for an hour, days, weeks. Yeah. Well, as soon as you enter into the brain spotting and it allows your subconscious to be hacked, it's like 5 minutes.
Interesting.
You feel the emotion for 5 minutes. You release the emotion, the trauma's gone.
That's interesting, because I was actually similarly to that concept. I was going to ask you about the DMT. I know there's people who are scared of opening a door that can't close.
Right.
So, what is there research or anything to say, like a guarantee that it closes, or like?
In my personal experience, and this is just anecdotal, and also if you listen to Joe Rogan, he's a good source. He has talked about it on several occasions. But I'm looking at your computer here, and like he explains it as you enter into the DMT session with your computer, and you have your hard drive up, and it essentially takes your existing hard drive and puts it in a little folder over on the desktop, and it says your old bullshit. And you can access your old bullshit if you want to, but you really have a clean slate. But to me, that wasn't even the right description, because I had a previous relationship that was very tumultuous, and it was very difficult, and that's what was driving this depressed state. And when I came out of the DMT, when I went to go back to access the event that was the most trauma, I couldn't even access it. I can't even remember it.
Interesting.
And it was one of those things where it was looping all the time. So I went from being able to access these images, this particular situation, to not accessing it at all. They can't even get to the place. It's strange. It's the strangest thing. So
that's really interesting.
In my personal opinion, I think what happens is the door doesn't fling open and just stay open and then everything pours out. You have to have a very intentional thing that you want to get from the session. Like you have to have like your work pants on. It's like, all right, even from a brain spotting standpoint, say I'm going to go brain spot, and say that you and I had a bad fight, and it was really difficult for me to get over. Well, when I go into the brain spot session and I'm thinking about, I'm actively thinking about this particular time, once the emotion is released, it's just not there.
So, like, if I slipped someone DMT, they wouldn't have they might not have a healing experience because they're not locked into that.
They would to some degree, because it does. So the amygdala is sort of in this hamster wheel, and what it does is it deactivates it.
Wow.
And so the amygdala, and then there's something called the insula. The insula is directly near the amygdala, and the insula controls what you feel from your skin inward. So when you feel, say, anxious, where do you feel it? Like for you, particularly?
Like in here?
In your chest.
Yeah.
It's like a heaviness or
Yeah.
like a hot thing, or what is it specifically?
Heaviness.
Okay, me too. So there's different experiences for different people. And that's what the insula is making you feel. It's directly connected to the amygdala. It's interesting, in MDMA, which is Molly, there's a lot of evidence based that it cures PTSD.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why it does is because, or one of the reasons, one of the mechanisms of action, is if you took it, let's just say recreationally, without therapy,
right,
it disconnects the insula to the amygdala further.
Oh.
So there's less and less trauma that you may feel in here and feel
and
here.
in there.
And that's one of the biggest problems myself.
That's why people lose themselves when it feels so good to just lose yourself with MDMA. Have you microdosed? I've never microdosed MDMA. I've macrodosed plenty of times.
I've also done that too. I've done it. I've microdosed one time. I don't think the dose was high enough.
What was it?
It was 30 milligrams. And so what they're saying is microdose is between 30 and 75.
That's what they said?
Yeah. And so once I did 30, I was like, I'm probably going to need to go to bed at some point, and I don't want to risk the idea of...
Wait a minute, 30 milligrams? That doesn't seem that low, bro.
That's what they say. 30 milligrams to 75. So the standard...
That's like me at a festival.
No, that's 150.
Huh.
It's 150. So...
Oh, wait, okay. 150 milligrams would be 0.15.
Right.
Okay, so we're talking about 0.003.
Right. So
that's a microdose.
Right. So what So what you're doing is, so like say you're macrodosing, and we don't condone that, but
maybe depends on who's around.
Exactly. So 150 milligrams, and you know when it starts to come down, what do you do?
Take more.
You're like 150.
Yeah.
What you're supposed to do is half. What you're supposed to do is half. And it's actually, from what I've learned on my own experience, but not only that, but like learning from Andrew Huberman, is if you do half the dose, it actually lasts a little bit longer than you would if you took the full
same dose.
Right. So anyway, the whole point of this I'm trying to get to is there are ways that I've been able to heal myself both in therapy and outside of therapy with psychedelics that have changed my life so drastically that it's been probably since I've done those things, since you've seen me. So I don't know if you can tell a significant difference or not, but I know that my loved ones do. And also, when it boils down to my clients, what we both want is a result, an end result. Right? Like a repair. Whether that's a gut health issue that's chronic, which is mental health related.
Right.
Or let's say you have a weight loss issue, like my sister, we can talk about that. That's mental health related. And so if we could use these tools to our benefit, if RFK does release them, man, I don't know if you can get on some waiting list, but man, it would be like, let's fucking go.
It's definitely worth exploring. The company, and this may actually ironically be the people you were talking about, but the biggest company that I've been familiar with just from podcasts and stuff for the last couple of years is called Third Wave. I think they may be based in Colorado because that's one state that these things are. But he's really big on MDMA microdosing and ketamine dosing. He's got his own podcast. His name's Paul. I can't think of his last name.
Paul.
But he's the head of Third Wave.
Yes, I think that's right.
We'll have to
I
IG each other after
should,
this.
Yeah, we should.
But yeah, he's been very, very interesting. But I haven't listened to recent stuff from him. But it would be huge, man. And the more ways we can turn around the chronic disease epidemic, the better. The way I see it, and it's interesting because I'd say in the past year or year and a half, well, definitely in this past year, in 2024, you and I service extremely similar different populations with extremely similar dysfunctions.
Right.
However, although we agree on things and do a lot of things similarly, we've almost kind of gone down different paths. You've been going down a psychological path of like getting to the root of why this is so chronic. I've been recently going down toxic burden paths and discovering so many people with Lyme disease and mold and just the inability to remove these toxins and how it's just been a buildup over 30 years of accumulation in their bodies.
So palsy, Ibogaine.
Yeah.
So Ibogaine is another one that's significantly powerful.
For opioid addiction, right?
All addiction.
Oh, all addiction.
Any addiction.
Oh, okay.
Even like psychological stuff.
Interesting.
So,
by the way, have you, not to cut you off, and we'll pin this, but GLP-1s are now showing work against addiction. And it has to be with how it manipulates the brain. It has to be. Or like a neurotransmitter stimulus.
It would have to be neurotransmitter related.
Right, because of the gut.
Right.
But we now have 2 patients who started GLP-1 specifically for alcohol addiction, but now have lost 150 pounds because they stayed on it.
No shit.
So like obese transformations that were unintentional.
Are they now off alcohol?
Yeah.
No shit.
It actually, it's.
So what GLP-1 are you using?
They were using tirzepatide.
Okay.
They came to us already on it, and now they're staying on it.
Okay.
But they don't titrate. That's not the point.
It's just like a low dose.
It's a low dose that initiated specifically for addiction, but now they're on this massive weight loss journey because of it.
Is there a study attached to that? I would love
Not that I've looked into. Just our deductive reasoning automatically brings us to maybe dopamine, neurotransmitters, what's impacting that addiction thought process, and also we know GLP-1s are in the gut, so there's correlations there.
Well, yeah,
But it's not a dive I've taken, but since you brought up addiction, it just...
I would be really interested in that.
Yeah.
Really interested.
There's a lot of untapped education and research around GLP-1s, and obviously most of the people in the profession are like anti because they're so misused. It's kind of like testosterone.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of abuse, but there's also applications where it's super beneficial, and that's kind of where I'm open-minded to that exploration. I'm not saying GLP-1s are great.
Dr. Tina, or whatever her name is, I think she's out in Colorado, out in Oregon. I'll have to send you her page. But she's an advocate of it. And I've listened to some of her stuff. She's got a podcast that breaks it down, and it makes it less scary,
Yeah.
I guess, in terms of functional medicine.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, if you could get more, like if you could get more information on the addiction side,
Yeah.
I think that would apply in a multitude of different ways. Because this is what's interesting about Ibogaine. When you take Ibogaine, it's a heavy metal detoxificator.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you listen to Sean Ryan,
Yep.
if you do, but he talks about his experience.
Yeah.
And so he says, he's like, I take this pill, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm waiting for this to start to work. And he's like, then my face starts to melt off my skull, which is not indicative of what I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, if you want to have images or hallucinations on Ibogaine, you close your eyes. If you open your eyes, you're in a normal place.
Interesting.
And you can operate. But if you close your eyes, you essentially see your life and all of the events in it from a third-party perspective,
Wow.
with empathy for you and the person that inflicted the trauma on
Wow.
you, which is mind-blowing.
Interesting.
And so, but what he said was, when he got home, his wife was like, the whites of your eyes are significantly white. And he's like, I quit alcohol, I quit sugar, he quit all these different things inadvertently. He didn't mean to. He just did.
Wow.
And so he lost weight,
Ton of weight.
healthier.
Yeah.
He didn't have PTSD anymore.
Wow.
You listen to his podcast. He's a really sharp guy.
He did ayahuasca too, I think.
Right. But he liked Ibogaine more than he did ayahuasca.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So ayahuasca's a little rough. I haven't done it yet. But the whole point is, if you could purvey a niche in being able to just access microdosing mushrooms for SSRI standpoint,
Would love to.
that would significantly change the outcome of most of my patients,
Yeah.
most of my clients.
Yeah.
Because what's happened, Matt, is like, okay, my price point's probably on the lower end of our community.
Yeah.
But what I would say is I get a lot of vastly difficult cases.
Yeah.
And so those difficult cases come to me, and they don't have the funds,
Sure.
right, to even maybe access your clinic.
Right.
Well, if that's the case, then I've got to take my own knowledge and apply it into the relationship. So I somewhat become a therapist
Right.
to some degree.
Right.
So there's been times, and this is a good example, my sister has always kind of struggled with her weight, but there was a particular period of time in our life where she broke her wrist at a young age. She was doing a cartwheel in the backyard, and I remember being in the backyard, and I had my back turned to her, and I heard pop. I mean, it was the loudest pop I'd ever heard in my life. So much so that it made me turn around. And when she got up from the cartwheel, she had slipped on some mud, and her arm was in a V.
Oh.
And I was just like in shock. The only thing I knew to do was to go to the neighbor behind us and tell him, because my parents were on a date. And so he took her to the hospital. My parents ultimately called up. But from that point forward, she's very active, and then she stopped being active. I don't know if it was
Fear.
a fear, but also depression, maybe in and around, maybe the weight gain that she had, things like that. She's young. She's probably 10 or 11. So from that period on, and then you tackle on trauma that we've experienced in our own family, she's always struggled with her weight. Well, she came to me probably 3 years ago and asked for me to coach her. We didn't have the relationship that we do now. So
Yeah.
I farmed her out to another person. She worked with that person for a while, and she never really could lose more than 10 pounds. So ultimately, I got frustrated when she circled back around, and she was giving me kind of an update. It had been years, and so I just was like, well, let me try my hand at it.
Yeah.
And she was on a GLP-1 agonist. She was on several other medications, and she was overwhelmed by all the different things that she had to do.
Sure.
Weigh her food, all that stuff. And so I pulled her off all of it. There was a multivitamin we stayed on, a B complex, just some of the standard things. And then I drew a meal plan where she just uses her hand to measure out her foods, and then she has a menu that she can choose from. So even if she's out and about for work,
She can make it work.
She can make a good decision.
Yeah.
So we start making good decisions, and she started to lose a little weight.
Wow.
But when things really started to change is I had her read the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
So she's understanding now of how trauma affects her. And then we had some conversations too. So these conversations, when I'm having them with clients, it's to raise self-awareness.
Mm.
it's kind of like you when I was asking you, where do you feel
Yeah.
your anxiety?
Yeah.
Most people don't have that. They don't have that self-awareness. You've been in therapy for years, so you probably learned that
Yeah.
along the way. But if you're just a regular person, you're walking through life,
Right.
and you're stressed, and you have fucking no clue that you're stressed
Right.
because you're
so
maybe
used to it.
focusing on so many other things in your environment
Yeah.
that you're not in touch with how you feel,
Yeah.
your body.
Yeah.
And your brain and your body are connected, right?
Right.
And your brain leads your body where it's
course.
going to go. So when we started to gain more self-awareness, and she started to learn that you can make a connection with how you feel, and one of the I guess examples that I gave her, I said, when you're really anxious, where is it? She said, it's warm in my chest. And I said, okay, when you're anxious next, focus on the warmth in your chest, and then think about where is somewhere neutral in your body. And she immediately was like, well, my feet are cold. She started to think about her feet, and her anxiety went away.
Interesting.
So if you shift the brain to where you're feeling more neutral, then it calms the central nervous system down. So that was a tool that she could use in any time when she's at work, or when she's maybe in an argument with her spouse or whatever, that she can immediately downregulate her central nervous system
Very interesting.
without me having to be there.
Yeah.
Well, so now she's become pretty good at managing her central nervous system, and we've lost 20 pounds.
Amazing.
So
Without the protocols. and
without
stuff.
all the protocols,
Yeah.
we're just doing simple
Yeah.
lifestyle stuff, food changes,
Yeah.
and then working on mental health.
Yeah.
And you know, every phone call that we have, and that might be once every 3 weeks or something, where it's like, I do have an advantage, right? She's my sister.
Sure.
She does sort of implicitly trust me.
Yeah.
And I do understand where she's coming from. But I think the breadth of maybe what you've been through personally, what I've been through personally, it's not lost on us on how to connect with our clients.
Totally.
And so if you can connect on that basis, and you can give simple tools to downregulate your central nervous system,
Yeah.
then they can do those things and work with a therapist.
Yeah.
But it's a roll of the dice of a therapist, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can have a decent one.
It's like coaches.
Absolutely. You can have a decent one, but you may not have one that can. It's kind of like I think about Austin. You want to learn about something really complex, but in like one sentence, just ask Austin how to explain it.
Yeah.
It'll just be like, this is the most complex thing that I could say, but it's really simple in this
Yeah.
sentence. And that's,
Sam does really good at that too.
yes, Sam.
That's something like I caught immediately when I first started listening to Sam years ago. It's like he just broke that down so simplistic.
Right, so that's a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And so like when you become a teacher, and I think that's where I'm headed in this mental health realm,
Yeah.
it becomes a lot easier for somebody to take a really complex thing, simplify it down, and then have action items to be able to drive towards
Yeah.
being better.
Yeah.
But going back to my bodybuilders that ended up doing 5-MeO DMT, I mean, Robbie Jenkins is one of them. She went from a complete mess. I mean, GI issues, all kinds of things. We couldn't get anything together.
Yeah.
And then she did 5-MeO DMT, and within weeks, she was like a machine, bro.
Really?
She was like checking the boxes, no problem.
Wow.
And we went through this last prep this past year. She's probably the leanest I ever got a female. And she was on the smaller side, so we didn't win, but she got second.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, I've seen it in action
Yeah.
with other individuals. Another guy did it too, and in fact, I just got off the phone with him on the way here, and his entire demeanor when I talked to him, he went from like perfectionist, anxious type person to just as chill as you are sitting in that chair.
Wow.
And that was just one time.
Yeah.
So if you could take any number of psychedelics.
Right.
And if you knew what to do and how to do it.
Right. Which one would be applicable?
Right. You could change a person's life in one session.
Yeah. That's so interesting, and that kind of ties into one of the topics we want to talk about today of like the current American healthcare system. How much do they not want these types of therapies to be present, because how much money could be lost through SSRIs, Adderall, mood stabilizers?
It would upend the entire industry.
Yeah. More so than possibly metabolic issues.
Because you're looking at a one-time shot at potentially curing 50% of the community.
Right.
And then, I just had an interaction with a client yesterday. She goes to OBGYN, and they pull blood work, and her vitamin D was, I don't know, like 100. It's fine.
Yeah.
She immediately said, get off the vitamin D. And I don't know if you saw it, but there's a study out now that vitamin D is now preventative for cancer.
Yeah.
So I'm literally like, the problem is that the top has pushed down really bad information.
Yes.
So I think well-meaning individuals
Yes.
who are probably good people who want
Yes.
to be good at their job,
Yes.
but may be overwhelmed
Yeah.
because they've got 15 minutes with each client,
Yes.
which I'm going to circle back around with. And she immediately tells the woman to not take vitamin D anymore, but we've already learned that one of the main driving factors behind COVID-19 being bad
was lack of
vitamin D.
Right.
And then now we have the study that's come out that says vitamin D is preventative for cancer.
Right.
What are we doing?
Right.
We're just uneducated.
Right.
So then you look at my general practitioner, and boy, do we get into arguments.
Mm-hmm.
He's a friend of mine. He's a bodybuilding advocate.
Yeah.
And he is straight up Western medicine.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there in his office, and we're talking about blood pressure medication, because I don't want to tell him sorry.
Yeah.
And I said, Greg, it was 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, Greg, how many patients have you seen today? And he said, 25.
Wow.
25 from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Wow.
25 patients.
In 2 hours.
So you tell me that you're having any meaningful
Right.
anything
Right.
with any of these people.
Right.
And the majority of the people walking in the door, you're going, well, they've got SIBO, they've got some metabolic syndrome,
Right.
they've got insulin resistance.
Right.
So like, I know the conversation isn't what do you eat, how do you sleep,
Right.
how's your stress, how's your environment home,
Right.
do you have a bad relationship. So the basics aren't even being taught. But then you have this powerful thing over here in psychedelics
Yeah.
that could wipe out that conversation altogether.
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's super frustrating for me because it goes all the way from lack of education,
Yep.
the lack of desire to get smarter,
Yep.
and fear of preventative testing, maybe.
So this is the perfect topic, and I want to peel back each one of the layers you just said even further so that people better understand, because it's not rare for you, I, other functional specialists to kind of trash Western medicine. But to be clear, while there are good and bad doctors, when we talk about Western medicine, we're not so much talking about the physicians of the country. We're talking about the system in which physicians are actually, victims themselves. So problem number one, med school curriculum is written literally by Big Pharma. So doctors only know what they know. It is not a system designed to fix you. It's a system to manage symptoms, and that's all they are taught. Mm-hmm. They spend $250,000 to $500,000 on this limited education that took them 10 years and a ton of debt. They finally get out of it, and they're told, Just do what you're supposed to do and don't ask questions, and you'll make a ton of money. And the more people you see every day, the more money you make, because the insurance companies and stuff incentivize that. So they're almost incentivized to not continue their education because they're so broke, they're so in debt, and they're finally ready to start making money as a doctor.
Right.
So there's that. They're in debt, they're not incentivized to go get more education, and they're exhausted because they just worked 100-hour weeks.
And they just have to see, there's 25 clients in the waiting room before 10 a.m.
Yeah, they have no time to keep studying.
Insane.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I look at Greg, he looks like he's like, all right,
Yeah.
what do you need?
Exactly.
Write it.
Exactly. Then you have the fear around liability lawsuits. Medical liability lawsuits is huge. So not only are you incentivized to not continue your education, you're actually penalized if you go against the grain.
Right.
So even if you knew to go against the grain, you're so scared of losing everything that you just spent 10 years fighting for and all your debt, you know? So there's all these issues that are handcuffing doctors, literally handcuffing doctors. And then you also have, you mentioned diagnostic testing. Insurance companies get furious when doctors ask for more testing, and they have to justify that. So imagine you're going about your day and you're trying to service all your clients, and at the end of the day, you're just getting shit on by insurance companies saying, why the fuck did you approve this? You know? And I don't even know what that conversation actually looks like, but it probably sounds similar to what we just said.
Sure.
We just listed off like 7 different reasons of why we're not getting good health care.
Right.
And we've barely even scratched the surface.
And it's because because at the top, it's broken.
Yeah.
On purpose.
On purpose. Yeah, nobody wants to fix it.
Yeah, it's on purpose because, like, and I have this conversation with each client that I sort of onboard. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know where you fall, and it's interesting. I've had this conversation since probably 2020, and the answers are starting to change. So in 2020 there was a lot of trust, and then there's not a lot of trust. Now there's now or in the middle there was not a lot of trust, and then now there's almost zero. And so when you start to have these client conversations, and I'm like explaining the system to them the way that I'm explaining it to you, because I have to somehow justify, well, the cost of blood work through Ryze,
Right.
The cost of
Right.
GI map through Ryze,
Right.
and why do we need to do these things,
Right. And why hasn't their physician done it?
Right. And why can't they go down the street to the general practitioner and ask for these things?
Right.
Well, the answer is the health insurance companies are in bed with the pharmaceutical companies, and they don't want you to take those tests, because if they find out that you have a pre-existing condition or a preventable condition that we can actually address, then they lose a customer.
Totally.
And so when I explain that, I mean, most people's brains kind of break because they're not in our space. They're not
Right.
having this conversation.
It sounds so dark.
Right. But because of COVID and the way it went down, people now understand, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But they're not getting that narrative
Right.
from anyone,
Right.
except for maybe Joe Rogan and
Yeah.
some of these other podcasts that
Right.
are coming out that aren't
Right.
us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it's
Yeah, I'd say the one medical professional that we can acknowledge who's actually being 100% open is Casey Means.
100%.
She's a real surgeon,
She's awesome.
just fucking letting it all out there.
Yeah.
And we've all been like, yes.
Wouldn't you love to see, like, just the boardroom of some pharmaceutical company or something listening to podcasts and, like, the uncomfortable, like, the moving in the seats and the, oh my gosh, she said that.
Selling stocks, literally like emergency actions.
Yeah, it's a really, and if anybody that's listening that hasn't listened to Casey Means, stop what you're doing and listen to her.
Yeah,
to her,
absolutely.
because it's like, have you ever just heard the truth about something and you're like, well, I can't unhear that.
Right.
Like, that's life-changing information.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna not know that anymore.
Right.
She's one of those people.
She is, yeah.
So when she speaks, it's like, well, there's really no rebuttal.
Right.
So I think that's the other thing that we may have seen in the election, where maybe the population does know more than we think.
I think like you said, they've been waking up. Yeah, they're working towards it.
And so, like, the more we learn, the more maybe RFK and some of these other guys, draw back the curtain.
Yeah.
Then they're not going to have an option.
Yeah.
Because you ultimately hurt them in their pocket.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're just not going to go to them.
Right.
They're going to come to us.
Right.
They're going to spend the money with us because
Right.
they're like, well, at least I know they're not going to bullshit me.
Exactly.
They're
Yeah.
not going to hurt me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's an ongoing issue.
Well, and something else related, but not directly related, and it's something that I've only experienced this past year with the hybrid approaches.
Right.
Prescribing a medication. The prescription process is so ass backwards in this country when it comes to insurance coverage. Rifaximin is a great example. So when we prescribe rifaximin, automatically insurance company comes right back to us saying we need a prior authorization. Meaning, although the doctor prescribed it, we want the doctor to prove to us the necessity of this, even though they already prescribed it. So, our PA has to then do all those prior authorizations, and some are more, detailed than others. Some are 3 fucking pages long.
Really?
Yeah. And some of the questions they ask is, they give you a list of actions that you should have already taken before rifaximin.
Oh God. Okay. So I know exactly what you're saying. So I had a shoulder issue, and I didn't know. You get to a place where like you're training and it's impeded.
Yeah.
And, like your day to day is kind of like you're just like fuck this. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get this checked out.
Yeah.
So I go to Emerge Ortho, which is like an urgent care
Yeah.
in Raleigh, and I walk in and I'm like, there's something up with my shoulder. And the doctor said, well, have you tried anti-inflammatories? I was like, no, I don't take them because they mess up your gut. And he's like, well, you're going to have to do that first.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that first, then if I ask for an MRI through your health insurance company, they're going to decline it.
Exactly.
Because this is the way it goes.
Exactly.
You've got to be on anti-inflammatories for 6 weeks.
Yes.
And if it still hurts, then I've got to run some tests
Yes.
here in the office.
Yes.
And then I've got to submit it, and they still may not
Yes.
give us the MRI.
Yep.
When ultimately, I think I ran across a place where you can do MRIs, you can do
EKGs.
calcification testing, EKGs, and it's all like a la carte.
Nice.
And it's out of pocket, and it's
Yeah.
like not expensive.
Yeah.
$300. So there are options happening, but
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm like, dude, wouldn't you love to just get in an MRI, fucking know exactly what
Yeah.
the deal is, and then treat this,
Yeah.
treat the deal, like
Yeah.
come to your clinic, get some peptides, and
Right.
fix it.
Right. Right.
That, like, why would we not want to operate like that?
Right. Well, it's because they want to force you into spending all this money doing other things first.
Well,
Like, yeah, like they said, have you tried metronidazole? Like, they list off all these things that wouldn't be effective scientifically, that don't even make sense. And then, like, one of the last things they ask is, has this person been diagnosed with IBS-C? Because if not, no.
What?
Doesn't make sense. That's a symptom. And so in order to actually get approved for rifaximin, you have to have a diagnosis of IBS-C.
You get me
But
riled up.
rifaximin is an antibiotic.
Right.
What are we doing here?
You're getting me riled up.
I don't know a single physician to this date that I've spoken to that acknowledges that rifaximin is an antibiotic, so we're treating infections. No one acknowledges that.
Ever?
It's a drug for IBS.
Wow.
They
it's
don't
not
even
classified correctly.
they don't even know what they're treating.
That's wild. Well, that explains why out of pocket rifaximin is like $1,600.
Yeah. And so we go through those loops. We try the best we can to get the coverage, but as you know, at least 40% of the time it gets denied, and we go through other resources for them.
Right.
But yeah, that's another problem. There's so many different problems all hitting us at once.
Yeah.
And so you can only imagine if that's happening with rifaximin, what else is that happening with?
Oh gosh, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Did you? By the way, total side note, but a year ago I was contemplating getting my own health insurance, which I haven't had for years.
Right.
I am my own health insurance.
right.
But so I thought about it because I thought, oh, business expense, me and Aaron can get on a group thing. Well, they go through my history. They're about to approve me. Motherfucking cocksucking Dr. Ferris, 5 or 6 years ago, diagnosed me with diabetes to prescribe me metformin.
He did not.
So I have pre-diabetes on my fucking health record because I was a bodybuilder wanting metformin. I didn't even have high blood sugar back then.
That is wild.
He did that for his own like safety or liability. I'm like, you fucking piece of shit, bro.
Wow, that guy, he just keeps fighting us.
Yeah! Yeah, you're so right.
I mean, that is nuts.
Yeah, I was so mad when I found that.
So what happened?
I didn't get health insurance.
You're kidding.
They wanted to jack up my rates. I don't even need metformin.
Can you get it pulled?
I don't know. It wasn't worth my time. I was so like not bought in already.
Yeah, sure.
I basically told the girl like, look, I love all the help you've been trying to give us, but I didn't want this in the first place.
Right.
I'm good.
Right.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so.
I was so annoyed. They're technically, I guess, supposed to do that to cover their own asses. They need a diagnosis to justify it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
I was very disappointed when I found out he did that.
You should have shot him a note.
I know. We hadn't talked for years.
I would have hit him between the eyes, huh?
Yeah.
He's probably retired by now.
He probably is, I'm sure.
Anyway.
But
Wow. That's, yeah, I'm on the verge of being angry.
I know, man. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement in so many different ways. It's exciting.
Though.
No, yeah, I do too.
I feel hopeful.
I do too.
Like, just the cabinet picks, even
Yeah.
though they've been not popular in certain areas,
We all know why.
I love them.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of them.
The more pushback the media gives, the more you know it's a good candidate.
Yeah, it means that we're over the problem.
Right.
When it's hot,
Right.
when you touch something that's infected and it's warm,
Yeah.
you know it's where the problem is. So yeah,
Like Kash Patel, the
100%.
FBI guy.
100%.
Game changer.
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
dude.
There are.
Listen to the podcast with Cash and Sean.
We're about to listen to it tonight. I brought that up to Aaron.
It's so good.
I've seen clips, but now that he's official, I'm like, I want to go back and watch that whole thing.
He knows more about it than anybody else does. He already has like 65 people on a list of deep state individuals and their positions that he's going to wipe out.
Did you hear that the current administration, given everything that recently just happened this week, is now considering a pre-pardon for Fauci,
Yes.
Christopher Wray,
Yes.
and some other people? How do you pre-pardon if they haven't done anything wrong?
Right.
What?
I mean, when it's this fishy,
Yeah.
it's definitely like, I don't know how you get away with that.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you get away with the Hunter Biden thing either. I mean, 2014 to now, what was going on in 2014? Wasn't he like the head of some oil company in Ukraine?
That's exactly. When Joe was VP, that's when it all started. What an interesting date to pick.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Isn't it amazing that Trump got impeached for investigating the things that Joe Biden just pardoned his son for? What the fuck?
Right. Yeah. It's difficult to watch and not scream.
Yeah.
Because you're like, everybody's like, oh, conspiracy theorists. And it's like, we've been right the whole time.
Everything.
We haven't been wrong one time.
No.
Our little DM back and forth for
Right.
the last 4 years.
Right.
If we could just go, like, I don't know, if we pull those records, then we might get into trouble. In some
Well, and
conversations,
you know,
we were right.
I don't think it was Sean Ryan's podcast, but it might have been. He's had on a lot of ex-CIA guys because he is ex-CIA. One of the CIA guys talked about, you know, how the CIA and the media assist in manipulating conspiracy theories. And one thing that they do is there could be a conspiracy theory that happens to be 99% true. But what they'll do is a few days later add to that conspiracy theory with something false to then debunk the original conspiracy theory. And that is what they believe the whole QAnon thing was. It was to debunk all the factual stuff about the pedos and everything else and to make us look crazy.
Yeah, right.
But all that original stuff, the first part was all true.
Yeah, wasn't QAnon like John F. K. Jr. was still alive?
Yeah.
And he was going to be, like, Trump was going to be, he was still president.
Yeah, there was so much weird shit,
We should
dude.
call Patrick. Patrick knows it all.
Dude, there was so much weird shit. I
Should we
remember.
talk to Patrick about it?
No, we
We
haven't.
should.
I remember
He was all about it.
there was one little thing I saw around the 2020 election or it was like after the election. It's like they're all caught. Trump had a secret satellite analyzing all the electoral votes, and they caught all the you know, whatever, and he's actually been president for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's just like, guys,
That's what Patrick was telling me.
Guys,
the whole time.
no.
Dude, I'm telling you, there was a moment where I was like, Patrick, you have to stop sending me things.
take the tinfoil hat
You
off.
have to stop.
Yeah.
Seriously, bring it up to him and just see what he says.
Oh my God.
And I bet he still has it on his phone. So he would take, like, TikTok things.
Yeah.
He would record it on his phone and save it because he was afraid they were going to take it off of TikTok.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he was going to lose it forever. So I don't mean to out Patrick, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's like really funny
Yeah.
now, like looking back at
Yeah.
it, you know, hindsight's 20/20, but like, gosh, you should totally ask him about it. I mean, I bet he'd make you laugh for a day
Yeah.
because he was so in it,
Wow.
and he made me so anxious over it.
Yeah.
I literally was like, man, there is no way Trump is still president.
Right.
Like, there's just no way. Like,
Right.
he's like, no, Biden is not really Biden.
Right.
And, like, all of this stuff. And I was like, man, if this is true, then my entire world
Yeah.
is completely fucked.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's kind of like my whole world's been upended over the last year. Has it not for you?
Yeah.
Where you're like, the corruption is true.
Well, I think what's happened is the machine, and this is not left or right. There's a machine controlling the left and the right for the most part.
Right.
The machine has truly believed, and to a degree the right, that we are so stupid that we will fall for anything.
Yeah.
The stupidity of the masses, like Rome. And until this year, they were right. But we have slowly caught on, and every move that they've made, we caught them.
Yeah, right.
And they just keep trying to gaslight and backtrack and be like, no, no, no. And we just keep catching them in real time.
It's
catching
like
them in real time.
I've become an expert in narcissism.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I actually, there's narcissists in our life, unfortunately, but there's also just the narcissists in the politics arena. And luckily, the reps that I've gotten over the last couple of years, I'm like, oh, I see that for what it is.
Oh, yeah.
You gaslighting the shit out of me.
Totally.
It's not my fault.
Totally. 100%. Speaking of narcissists, let's talk about the bodybuilding industry. The bodybuilding and fitness industry.
Deal.
Kind of a topic that we knew we were going to get to sooner or later. Both of us are not as integrated as we once were. I'm less than you.
Yeah.
But I mean, when we first met, we were diehard
Every show.
bodybuilding coaches.
Yeah,
you
were
know,
at every show.
yeah,
We were having a lot of fun, and we were talking about bodybuilding all the time. Now,
we were still shitting on aspects,
sure,
but we were still passionate.
well, it's interesting. It's like I never, like when I entered into bodybuilding, I entered in sort of through Patrick's acquaintances and his business, and he's been in business for 20 years.
Yeah.
Nutrition store, all that, and so, but he always did things the right way.
Yeah,
And so, like, I never had a really poor experience with bodybuilding, really, because I was insulated in around these people
yeah,
that were good people.
Yeah.
And then I met John Meadows, and John was my coach for 2 years, and I mean, I don't think there's ever been a better human in the space.
yeah,
And then when he passed, I got to know Austin, and I'm very close with Austin. And then we have this group of individuals where we have the same belief system.
yeah,
We're kind of insulated from the bullshit, but we see it go down. And for me, I still hope that there's like change that can happen. You're very jaded because you've been in it for a whole lot longer than me, which is rightfully so. I mean,
Yeah.
if I had been doing it for as long as you, I'd have said fuck it. But I think the tide is turning some. I mean, if you look at what Camp Jansen, there are some truths coming out about, predatory coaches,
yeah,
negative aspects of how they handle people's health,
yeah,
even sort of the protocols for women and stuff like that. So I think there's a little eke of hope
Mhm.
that things may change, but I also see bodybuilding sort of dying.
I think there's shifts away from the passion of and enjoyment of competitive bodybuilding. Going to the gym, building your physique, people love that. But the competitive bodybuilding industry, we've definitely seen change. You and I talked about that. Tyler Manning in the past year mentioned signups are down 30%. So it's an acknowledgement. We see it online less. We see competitions for the past few years have been declining.
But do you think I don't think it's bodybuilding driven. I think it's psychological from a standpoint of, to be a competitive bodybuilder, you have to be peeled.
Yeah,
To win a pro card, you have to be impressive.
yeah,
Especially, thinking about nationals,
Yeah.
going up in nationals next week. Austin Stout's competing in light heavyweight.
yeah,
The changes he's made over the last year are the most significant I've seen.
yeah,
The one thing that I've seen with him in particular is his environment has just
Drastic change.
gotten better.
yeah,
So like he's always a creature of habit, but his environment got better, therefore his results got better.
yes,
So then it's also intelligent coaching.
Yeah.
Right. So he's prepping himself all the way up until 8 weeks out, and then Cliff comes in and he peels
second
his
eye,
shit,
yeah,
right? And so at the end of the day, even with my guy Emerson, we're heading into nationals too. We've got a lot of hope that he can potentially get a pro card, but there's not a lot of focus on quality bodybuilding. Yeah, and quality meaning people are coming to coaches unhealthy.
yes,
People are coming to coaches with functional health issues.
yes,
And they're going to coaches that don't know or can't recognize those things, and they just do old school
yes,
bodybuilding protocols to try to get these clients to where they need to be.
yeah,
And the clients are psychologically broken, and all they want to do is step on stage, and they don't understand that the world doesn't work like Amazon,
right,
and they don't get it tomorrow.
right,
And so bodybuilding is a long haul
it's a journey,
thing.
yeah,
And like you take Austin as an example, he's been doing it for 14 years or
Right.
something, and he's been consistent with it. It's
Yeah.
not like he's stopped.
right,
So ultimately, there's a mental health component of I want what I want and I want it right now,
right,
I'm metabolically dysfunctioned. I'm going to get a coach that's going to make me worse. So when I actually step on stage, I look like I had a pizza party before I got there.
Yeah.
And then it actually dilutes the fans in the excitement for the competitive bodybuilding, because nobody wants to see a fat girl on stage.
Totally.
Or a fat guy.
Yeah.
For that matter.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the driving force behind where we're seeing the
quality on stage.
The quality on stage, but it's the disinterest.
Yeah.
Except for the Olympia. If you look at the Olympia, there's a massive amount of people watching it.
Yes.
You look at Chris Bumstead. What is he at? Like 22.5 million followers.
Insane.
His wife is like 1 million, and she hasn't done a show in 10 years.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, people are watching.
Right.
But they're only watching the elite level.
Right.
And to get to the elite level, and let's just be honest, you have to have elite genetics.
Yeah.
And the people entering into the sport
don't.
They just don't.
No.
And then on top of that, they're metabolically messed up.
Right.
So it's a hope for me that me being the coach, the type of coach that I am, and I'm not a short-term guy.
Right.
In fact, I'm very strategic about when I put people on stage. And there's off seasons and there's health phases, and they're legitimate.
Yeah.
Right? We're legitimately correcting metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, liver detoxification, hormone issues, gut issues, all those things. So if you're doing those things, then bodybuilding can be really fulfilling.
Yes.
It can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a lot of fun with my clients.
Yeah.
But it's the masses, and I think we're probably at this tipping point with coaches who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're going to fade out.
Well, I think another issue is, and I guess you could kind of put you and I in this window, but I think the problem is that bodybuilding coaches are, trying to expand their horizons, and everything is a do-it-yourself these days. Like,
right.
I know people who, if they could YouTube their own surgery, they would. And a great example is my former assistant coach, Tom.
Oh, yeah.
Tom tried to do his own PRP injections. He drew out blood and intended to re-inject himself with his own plasma.
You are kidding
No.
me.
That is the best definition for the new generation of bodybuilding coaches.
When did that happen?
That was years ago.
Matt.
Yes. I swear to God.
That is so wild.
Yeah. That, the do-it-yourself, we got this mindset. And, you and I have spent years and endless amounts of money educating ourselves and experiencing so many different things. Now it's just like, let me go pay for a one-day course, or even worse, let me do a consult, steal this information, rebrand it, and sell it as myself. And now I've just convinced these people with metabolic dysfunction that I can fix them, and that we can still accomplish bodybuilding at the same pace with a few supplements added in for their gut health and for their hormones and for their mitochondrial repair.
I have a couple of coaches that are coming to mind. Actually.
Yeah.
What I see is failure.
100%.
So what's interesting is they're great marketers. They have and that I'm not, by the way. If you look me up on Instagram, it's the worst. But ultimately, at the end of the day, these guys, they take really professional pictures.
Yep. Where they have a professional video crew following them.
Right. Or in it's the classic, I'm the client is there and I'm sitting here, but the camera guy's behind me.
Oh, the classic camp dance.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's this very professional, I'm looking at this client very intently. I know exactly what I'm going to do in terms of the moves that I'm going to make. And
Because a change in salt is going to change the fat on their fucking ass. Because manipulating sodium and potassium is going to change the fact that they have 10 pounds of fat on them.
Exactly. So when you see these people act in this way, it's really attractive to the young crowd.
Totally.
Because it looks like Cam Jansen.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to be Nick Walker or whoever.
Well, and when we refer to that the Cam Jansen, we're not talking about the team so much. We're talking about the ideology of Dallas McCarver.
Yes.
Because that was the real Cam Jansen.
Right.
Dallas McCarver, Michaela Aycock,
right.
They were the OGs,
right.
And that was when it was inspirational and motivational. Black and white photo that was very iconic,
right.
And now it's just replication.
Right, 100%.
And
so what I think is I have 2 or 3 particular guys that I know that operate this way, and the quality of the work that they put on the stage, I've beat them every time.
Yeah.
And and you can tell they're looking at me like, you have 1,600 followers. Like how are you doing that?
Yeah.
And it's like it's because I've actually put time and effort and money into my brain.
Right.
And I actually know physiology.
Right.
And I think that's the missing link is the coaches don't understand physiology.
No, they understand, like you said, they understand marketing, and they're very good at manipulating. I mean, perfect example. I had someone on a podcast month or so ago, big name bikini coach, and asked her about, the recent team that she joined and how that's all been going. And she said, it's great. My entire team has outsourced a mentorship program from another coach. And I said, oh, wow, how's that going? I know the coach, of course, and so do you, who offers that mentorship.
Exactly.
And she's saying how great it's going, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, I just did a consult with you about your own blood work a week ago. Your cortisol is 22, you have no progesterone, and you're insulin resistant, but the mentorship is going well?
Right. Well, and if you talk to that particular guy who does the mentorship, he talks a lot about how much money he makes with the mentorship program.
How about that?
So that's all he talks about it. It's not about like how many people he's
helped. Yeah.
It's how much money I'm making.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the deviation between, when we first met, I remember, man, there's this culture in North Carolina, and it's not so much this way anymore because I'm so disconnected from North Carolina bodybuilding, because I don't really put clients on the bodybuilding stage here in the States.
Yeah.
In the 3 states that we're in. And so, but I remember it was like you had no allies. It was
back against the wall.
You're a silo amongst yourself.
Yeah.
And you have to hate everyone.
Yeah.
And if you didn't hate everyone, then you had some sort of shady, backdoor deal you were trying to do.
Right.
And so when I met you, I was like, this motherfucker.
Yeah.
So it was like I don't know anything about him. All I know is that he's somewhat successful.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
Yeah.
And it was because the culture says you have to not like your competition.
Right.
And, unfortunately, you're about the only one that rose to the top in terms of an individual that I like, that actually has good intentions. And that's what we clicked on.
Yeah.
It was like, we want to see a change. And, I think when you started Ryze, that was definitely part of what your mission statement was. It's like, you're changing the way you're doing TRT.
Right.
And also just being intentional and understanding that the people that we're working with are people.
Right.
I don't think that the majority of coaches in the space, bodybuilding or other for that matter, they don't see these people as people.
No, I think we have to be careful when we use the term successful coach, because I think what everyone thinks of with successful coaches, the Shelby Starnes, the 400 clients, the 6 or 7 figures that they're making, but successful coach means they're having success with clients,
Right.
And especially for some reason over the last 5 or 6 years, it seems like profits and money making have become far more important than making winners. And and if we do prioritize making winners, it's only just to increase profits. It's not because you're passionate about making winners. I don't know where this happened. Do you agree that you've kind of seen this shift where now coaches are flashy and they have mansions and exotic cars, and it's like
I've almost put away my Jordans altogether, because it's like if you wear Jordans, it's almost like I don't even know that it's a status symbol anymore, but there for a while it was. And I was like, honestly, I bought Jordans because when I was younger, I couldn't afford them.
Yeah.
So there's like all these reasons why people do things. And
obviously, mostly social media.
Sure. And so when I look at my own roster, there's not a person I can't name.
Right.
I don't forget anybody.
Right.
I think I got a happy Thanksgiving from the majority of them.
Yeah.
Which is a win.
Yeah.
And I'm invested in them. So like take this prep with Emerson. We've been prepping for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Since 8 weeks out, I've talked to him every day.
Yeah, that's the way it should be.
And so, like, you talk every day. There's mental challenges. There's physical challenges. There's tweaks with the various plans that you have to have, and like, it's a team effort. It's not a me. I'm awesome, and you're gonna elevate me. It's really, I want my clients to win. Just because that's what their goal is.
Right.
And so if I get some sort of benefit from it, like I get another client or, I get recognized, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
But it's not my driving force behind what I'm doing.
Right.
It's actual care.
Yeah.
And I think in the bodybuilding space, you're gonna lack people who care, because the majority of them are narcissists.
Yeah. Which brings us back to
the
original comment.
Right.
No, and that's exactly it. And it's not just the coaches who are narcissists. It's 99% of the clients. And then you have two narcissists. A narcissist trying to control a narcissist.
It's a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, just go to a show and sit in an open space where coaches are working with clients. You know how like sometimes there's a coach posing with a client over there. There's a coach over there talking to a client.
Yeah.
If you just sit back and just watch,
it
is a wild community that we have.
Here's something that Aaron and I acknowledged recently, and you tell me your thoughts, but how many couples do you know that very happy relationship, but one of the husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, decide to get into competition, and they still lasted more than 4 years together?
Yeah, I don't. It takes a very special person to be able to go through a prep with a spouse who does not know how it goes.
Well, not only that, but so you enter this world, like you said, you already have self-confidence issues or something. That's why you got into bodybuilding.
Sure.
You have all these self-confidence issues.
You get all this attention.
Now you're with a coach who says you look amazing every day. Now you get all this attention online from men and women telling you how great you look. Everybody wants you. Everybody wants to talk to you. You're getting all this recognition, and you have that coach, and I think it's just very easy to fall into a situation of cheating or initiating an even if it's not cheating, it's an inappropriate relationship with someone else because you've entered this new world. And you're getting every day almost getting more disinterested in your original spouse because they ain't providing you all this new attention and love.
That's on the coaches. I'm going to give that's the coach's responsibility, and that's where when you have So narcissists don't have boundaries,
Right.
and that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Right. So ultimately, when I first started, I wasn't good at boundaries, but it wasn't that I wasn't good at boundaries because I was a narcissist. It was because I thought you had to pour your all into the person to get the results that you really wanted because you wanted to be successful.
Right.
And success with your client breeds your business
Yeah.
being successful.
Yeah.
So over the years, I've really had to pare back the boundaries of
Or how much you give.
Well, yeah, it's a combination. It's like, how much do I give of myself? But it's also, how much time do I give?
Right.
Because if I'm on my phone all night, on the couch with Donna, let me tell you how far that's going to fly.
Right.
It's not.
Well, yeah. Well, but in even going to a step further, if you're enjoying a late night show with Donna before bed, and a client needs something from you at 10 p.m. an inappropriate time, and you respond, now that client knows if I need him at any time, he's there for me.
Right.
And that initiates an inappropriate relationship.
You're exactly right.
And we don't recognize we're just there for our client.
You're just working. So that's the thing that I've sort of learned over the last 2 years is, let's say you're single and you're a coach. Mm-hmm. You're not dating your clients.
Shouldn't be.
Right. And I wasn't.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was single. And so, but my clients became my community.
Yes.
And because, well, that's who I talk to all
every day.
And so ultimately, I had to start to, when Don and I got together, I had to start looking at the client relationship and saying, wow, that is inappropriate.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's inappropriate in the fact that I have some sort of sexual relationship or fantasy with them, but it's my time and attention is not on my relationship.
Right.
My time and attention is not on Landon.
Right.
My time and attention my brain is somewhere else.
Right.
And I need to be present with my loved ones. And so ultimately, like, working on how to be present at work, have boundaries on when that stops.
Right.
And there's certain outliers.
Right.
Like Emerson texts me every morning at 6 a.m. with pictures.
Yeah. That's for a window of time, though.
100%. But all I'm saying is, in the corporate world,
yeah,
you're not having that happen.
No.
So if you have a significant other or a spouse that is used to sort of a structured job,
yep,
then they have to get educated on how coaching works. That's one thing. Two, you have to realize that the habits that you created with your clients you've had for 5 years, you've got to now disseminate that and correct it.
Yes.
Because where you were 5 years ago as a single coach, when they're now your community, that can't be that way anymore.
No.
So when you go from having less boundaries to more boundaries, what happens? You might lose clients.
You lose clients.
I've done that.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately,
well, and we can think of other coaches we know where the friendship emerged so much that they stopped respecting the coach.
yes.
They stopped listening.
Right.
They took advantage.
Right.
They manipulated and lied. There's the respect
Yeah, it goes away.
was gone.
Yeah.
The relationship is gone.
Yeah. Right.
Now you're not even friends because you're really going to do that to your friend.
Right.
You know, like now it's so convoluted that you guys have to break it.
Right. So now it's gotten to a place where when I have my first client conversation, the boundaries are drawn out pretty clearly.
Right.
And then it's up to me to make sure the boundaries stay in place.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't blame it on the client.
Yeah, and it's easy if you're an empathetic person like myself to go, oh, well, this one time Nancy needs, some consolement. She lost her dog.
Right.
And it's like, the dog isn't a part of the deal.
Right.
You want to be there as much as you can, but you can't go overboard here.
Yep.
And so that's a really good point. And I think no one is teaching that part of coaching mentorship.
I agree.
Right? And so it's like how to have people skills.
Yeah.
How to deal with difficult situations.
Right.
How to not be an asshole.
Right.
Like there's all kinds of things that like luckily I had a sales position prior to this and that taught me people skills.
Yeah.
So I had sort of a head start in certain ways.
Yeah.
But I was also hindered by my own relational problems
Yeah.
and inability to manage boundaries
Yeah.
prior to. So
Yeah.
this whole last 2 years, I mean, if any of my clients are listening, I'm a completely different fucking human being.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Right.
In fact, I think the majority of the people that are still with me, they like the dynamic more so now.
Yeah.
Because it has that professional aspect to it. And
Yep.
it feels like work.
Right.
Because people want to work.
Right. Well, they're paying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to work.
Yeah.
And it's like a dog. It's like if you get your dog and you don't work them, you don't play with them,
Right.
then they're pretty depressed.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing.
Totally. No, I
That's a
agree.
really good point.
Yeah. Yeah. What time do you have? Is my watch good?
152?
We should probably, yeah, I mean, we could go 6 more hours,
Forever.
but I know we got some other adventures to do today. So, Ken, man, I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
Next episode, we're going to have to do in Florida.
Dude, I will absolutely do that.
So that'll be the game plan for next episode.
We're gonna get on a boat afterwards.
Definitely. Yeah, we won't be out on the C8. We'll get in a boat. But great catching up with you, man. Great topics. I'm sure everyone listening is going to enjoy this unless they're part of certain teams. But other than that, it was a good conversation. I mean, I think there's a lot to take away from it.
It's a lot.
I hope that we can get into even deeper dives about the topics next time.
Sure.
Because it'll be after January 20th. So there should be even more changes taking place for us to discuss. So, yeah, you guys like, comment. Ken, if they want to follow you, tell them how to reach you. Email, IG.
Yeah, it's Foundry Training Nutrition on Instagram. It's Kenneth Almond on Facebook. It's my email is kenneth@foundryphysiques.com. And that's probably the best way to reach out to me. So thanks again.
All right, guys, tune in next time, and we'll chat soon.